which means it conforms to the DITA spec. But I think it's pretty clear that it's going to be problematic, that there are going to be issues here, and we're going to have to address those. All right. So at this point, let me switch back to my slides. And I think we've been through most of these. I just wanted to give you a quick review here. The map files. Map files are generally rendered correctly. They generally show up correctly, but we have some issues with nesting, and we have some issues with nav titles. They sometimes don't quite behave. Relationship tables were rendered. We didn't do anything particularly complex with them, but it did appear to work. Cross-references, the links are rendered. We have a behavior that is different in that a scope of external, an HTTP link does not launch a new window, but that's really a formatting issue. Conrefs are converted to Flare snippets. That seemed to work pretty well on import. And our conditional content seemed to work pretty well as well. So that's probably good. Okay, when we tried exporting, definitely some sort of strange things going on in export, and you can tell just by the little itty-bitty files that I was looking at that is probably not going to be viable, I don't think. And so for those of you that are already inside Flare, which seems to be the largest group that I've got here, I would have to say that at this point, a Flare-centric workflow that also produces DITA does not look viable to me at this point. If you're planning to move out of Flare, which I'm not recommending one way or another, but if you've decided you need to get out of Flare and you need to go to DITA, then possibly the export might work for you. I would say, though, that the main thing is that it gives you an option down the road. You can say, well, if I decide down the road that I need DITA, I can always use the escape hatch and get out through the DITA export and clean it up and do some work to it. So I think it's nice to have it there, even if you don't use it, just so that you have it potentially down the road if you decide you need it. So Flare generally, I would say, is definitely a contender for browser-based help or web-based help from DITA because all the other options are significantly difficult. Actually having to go through and generate or customize the Open Toolkit and produce your own web help is hard, and it's really, really, really a lot of work. And most of the constructs were rendered correctly, and I was really quite happy about that. So at this point, what I wanted to do was run another poll and see what you think. So, what do you think is the most interesting part of this that they have provided? What do you think would be the most appealing part of this for you? And, certainly I think it's fair to say that I'm pushing option one pretty hard just because I see that as technically the most viable way to do it. I don't know whether that's going to be the case for you. And I think certainly I can see there are piles and piles of questions coming in, and I will address those when we go to the question session in just a few minutes. All right, so another 5 or 10 seconds. And I'll close the poll and let you see the results here, which are pretty clearly that, you're sort of in the same boat that we are, that you see DITA to web help is pretty viable. I have not talked about DITA to something like PDF. That would certainly work just as PDF export works generally, so that could potentially work. But the rest of you are not so sure, and I would have to agree with that. I'm just not sure how well this would work in a production environment on really big files, as opposed to the little itty-bitty files that I was looking at. All right, so thank you for that. Let's take a look here. I have a couple of different resources for you. Of course, the MadCap site has DITA information. We wrote a DITA feature review on our blog back in June, I guess it's been. There are 2 parts of that. I've given you the link to the first one. You can also just go to our website and search on Flare DITA review or something like that, and you'll find it. And Mike Hamilton had a podcast. Mike Hamilton, who's a VP at MadCap, had a podcast with Tom Johnson that you might also want to take a look at. So I have that link posted here as well. All right, so with that, I wanted to throw in a quick note to tell you that we have some other webcasts coming up that are DITA related. Oxygen, DITA FMX, which is going to be done by Scott Prentice of Leximation. We also have Ann Gentle coming, and Tom Johnson and Jack Molisani. No topics quite yet. We're working on that. If there are other people or other topics you would like to hear, please let me know. Send me email, put it in the evaluations. And I also want to mention that as an additional incentive to fill out our evaluation, which is very, very, very short, we did receive a commitment from MadCap that they would give us a free Flare license. So if you would like the Flare license, there's a field in there. You put your email address in. If you cough up your email address, which, by the way, we already have, then we will enter you into that drawing. I should probably mention this applies only to the people on the live webcast and not to the people that will be seeing it as a recording.